There's a terrifying new reality and technology called embryo selection. It's an expansion of a technology called in vitro fertilization, known as IVF, and the next steps of IVF, called embryo selection, are being proudly paraded today. A Wall Street Journal article highlighted a child that they proudly put on an image and said this child was selected and screened for sex and genetic defects. Screened for sex and genetic defects. The technology is terrifying because it hides the fact that it is built up on the murder and the destruction of countless human beings. That's because embryo selection at its base is about fertilizing several embryos, sometimes dozens of embryos, creating human life, and then destroying the life that is deemed unfit. That is, children, or what they're calling embryos, that are deemed less worthy, less strong, susceptible to disease, or maybe have some other qualities that would be undesirable. Being sold in a much brighter light. And I think this is one of the reasons that it's scary and why we will see some popular adoption in society. It's being sold as a cure for all genetic diseases, serious underlying diseases that children can have and may not know they have during their childhood, or may not know they have until adulthood. Things like genetic defects that might cause blindness, genetic defects that could cause issues with the heart, or even those that might cause childhood or adult cancers. The promise is that if you use this technology, you can eliminate and prevent the suffering of children. You can even eliminate the suffering of future adults by only having those kids which don't have genetic problems or will have fewer genetic problems. The technology is only really a minor leap forward in IVF. IVF has always included some modes of selection. IVF is when you take separate sperm and egg, and in a manner outside of a womb, in a laboratory or in an office, they combine those in order to create a fertilized embryo. Those embryos have always been screened for shape, health, and viability. Sometimes even against the people who are participating in IVF, or the couple or the woman choosing to have an embryo implanted who doesn't desire selection, still minor types of selection do occur naturally in the process. That doesn't even begin to open up all the questions and horrors that come with unused embryos. In order for this process, IVF, as it's standardly practiced, to be done, dozens of embryos, or a maximum amount of embryos, need to be fertilized roughly at the same time, the most viable selected, the most viable and healthy used. This new wave of embryo selection is a new technology that takes selection away from visible and subjective markers about the health of a freshly made embryo. In reality, I hate using that term because we're talking about human creatures, people. We're talking about the most helpless people you could possibly imagine. Those immediately conceived, then destroyed. But this new technology relies on the human genome sequence and is a way of analyzing the genome of those embryos, applying that analysis to things we know about genetic diseases and defects, things we know about sex, things we know about height, maybe even hair color, eye color, and things like that within the genome, and then applying a filter to that, eliminating embryos that have defects, that don't have the qualities we're looking for. In an old world, in an older time, this would have just simply been called eugenics, and that would have been a dirty enough word to scare most people away. We're now doing away with that word. We're calling it selection, and we're banking on the fact that most people, the average American, won't consider an embryo life. But this advancement in technology admits that it's human life. It's no longer just a cell that we look at from a microscope and make surface level guesses. We analyze and make these decisions by the fact that it is a human being, that the human genome is present, and active, and that there is a code, a human code, in that embryo. The embryo is, in fact, a human, and it is because it is a human being, a living person, that they can attempt to analyze its future and decide that future suffering means murder now. Because you can kill an embryo and it won't experience suffering. This is a tragedy. We're predicting, prophesying, playing God that future human suffering might happen. Not a guarantee that anything will happen, but might happen. And in order to prevent it, it would be better to kill a thoughtless, feelingless human person at the smallest stages of life than allow them to suffer and die later when they are a conscious, feeling individual who can express those feelings. This is an extreme amount of arrogance. It perpetuates to know everything about an embryo when it comes to personhood, and that it can just easily be thrown away and commoditized, while also pronouncing itself a universal good for our society, a promise that we could eliminate and cure all diseases that happen at the genetic level, or that we could make our society stronger or smarter or more hardy. All of these are wicked promises because they are built on the back of death, and death at a mass scale. Embryo selection is not just murder, which is already bad. It is mass murder on a scale that is quiet, easy to conceal, hide, and put behind fake promises of hope. Embryo selection preys on the well-intentions and empathy of parents. It says you have the power to prevent suffering. You could give your children the best life possible. If you were presented with the option to make sure that your children were hardy from disease or were not going to have a genetic defect that made them suffer early in their life or even late in your life, wouldn't you do it? What kind of parent would say no to preventing the suffering of their own children? The problem is, this is a lie, a blatant lie. It is not preventing anything. It is identifying the disease before it manifests and then killing the individual with that disease. It is a violent culling of the human population, and it is being paraded as a promise, the next step in human evolution, the next step in human flourishing. And it's built on something that is absolutely pure evil. The science behind it, too, is clear. These are people. This is human DNA. This is a human genome. This is a human creature for which we believe we can predict its future and eliminate its fate, not by curing it, not by healing it, but by killing it. They are not killing, they are not curing childhood diseases. They are not curing blindness. They are not curing cancer. They are simply killing those who they believe will be susceptible to it. It is a tragedy. We cannot let this evil go unidentified. It is unambiguously horrific. So what do we say to people who are concerned about these kinds of things? To individuals or parents who are worried about the genetic history of their families and the potential future suffering of their children or their grandchildren or of other generations. Those who do not want to see suffering anymore. We have to tell them the truth. We have to be straightforward that what they're doing is not ending suffering. It isn't sympathetic. It's not the right placement of empathy or anything like that. It is simply a solution by turning a blind eye. It's a solution by prophecy as well. It's guessing what kinds of suffering might happen. It's saying that human life has less value if it's going to have suffering. It's dehumanizing. And it uses sympathy and empathy in order to dehumanize those who are the most easily dehumanized. It is easy to dehumanize an embryo. We have to be clear about this. But then you can also say that there is a solution, confidently, to human suffering. Not to end it here and now, that no people will suffer, but that suffering is not meaningless. The human life is not meaningless. It's not a game to be toyed with. The human creature was intentionally and lovingly made. And I think at the root, this science knows that it was intentionally made because it is using a genome sequence that is data, information that is innate to all human beings in order to make these decisions. They know that the human creature was created intentionally. Data is never an accident. The human creature is not just data, though. We are value. That data is there because a creator wanted to make us and has lovingly made the human creation. He's also lovingly redeemed it. He's brought an answer to suffering in his son, Jesus Christ, who has died with and for the sufferings of the whole world, both at the hands of our own sin, but also at the hands of the fall into sin, in which the whole creation was corrupted, the root of all disease, the root of all genetic problems. But God has not just left us with the consequences of this to live meaningless, suffering lives that just end in darkness. No, the suffering is answered by a God who died for you, who gives you his resurrection to a promise of new life, a life without suffering, a life without pain, a life without death. This world will have pain and suffering, but it comes to a pass, and it comes to a pass with the promise and the assurance of a resurrection from the dead in a body truly cured from all disease, cured from all suffering, by the sacrifice of Christ on the cross for all sins. Not just sins of act, but for original sin and the sin that corrupts all of creation, all human beings, all human DNA, all information in this world. And it is made right by his death and through his resurrection, through which you can have the comfort that your suffering matters, that God has seen it, that God has taken it, and he will take the suffering of your children and your children's children, and he has loved them, and he has died from them, and he is raised from the dead for you and for those future generations, so that we might live with him in eternal life, free from sin, death, and suffering. Thanks for listening. This was Caleb Keith from the Thinking Fellows in 1517. Like and subscribe.